Welcome back to Homeschool Journey 101, and today's session is about reading comprehension, improving reading comprehension. And this is the big thing. This is the biggest thing that has to happen for your child to make that jump into academic, success world. And this happens a lot. Renee and I, of course, have counseled hundreds and hundreds of students, which we talk about in the introduction, as well as when we brag about our children and how well they've done. But it does happen to me very often that people will say, "What curriculum did you use? Those 9 kids went to college and they're doing great." Or, "What's the trick?" And the thing is, reading comprehension really isn't a trick. I would go so far as to say that it isn't even really what curriculum you pick. It's how much effort and time and how many different ways you went about making your child into a reader. And so hopefully this video will give you many different pieces that you can put together and make that happen for your child. Because whatever your curriculum is, it's probably going to be the case that you're going to want to go even above and beyond the curriculum in this sort of journey, this homeschool journey towards an advanced reading comprehension level. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen for all homeschoolers. And it doesn't happen to all kids that go to school either. I hate to say anything about homeschooling that isn't just 100% positive, but the reality is that year after year, Renee and I see kids come into the program, and I've talked to other people who lead homeschool programs too, where the child may have really great basic reading skills, where if you listen to them, they sound like they're reading. But that next jump from, sort of the basic, or, they understand what's happening on this level, that jump into an advanced and serious depth of comprehension is a jump that is difficult for a lot of kids to make. It seems to be that there's a lot of pieces that need to go in there. And so in this video, we're not saying this is the only way. Instead, we're trying to give you a variety of different options that you would sort of pick from and figure out what's going to work to help launch your child into this world, if you will, of advanced reading comprehension. So here's the thing. We've put more time into this video, I think, than any other video that I know for sure than any other video that we have put together, because we're so convinced that this is a message that we want to get out there. This idea that advanced reading comprehension isn't just going to happen. Pretty much, I think whatever curriculum you pick, it's still going to require that extra piece from you to help your child achieve, the best that they can be. And the thing that's difficult about it is there's not just one way. Like if there was just one way, we'd all know it, right? We'd all know, oh, that's it. That's the way. There's this one thing will work. But instead, there's a lot of possible things that can work. There's a lot of different ways that different children will sort of launch themselves into the higher level reading comprehension. And so as their teachers, it's kind of for us to kind of put those pieces in place, to kind of cement this idea, or just sort of help you think about it. We've included a number of short clips from different young adults looking back at what they view as like a key piece for them. Like, when was it that I felt like I made a leap? I made this jump into understanding things at a different level. So we hope that will be helpful for you. This is harder than we want it to be, right? Like when your children are young, it all seems so easy. Just like, oh, we'll read these books. It's so fun. Everything's glorious, and pretty much we can go along, And so it's kind of hard as a homeschooler when we hit this thing where we realize, like, whoa, this next step is going to take a lot more out of this. But keep going, friends. You can do it. Your children can do it. And this is a gift you're giving your child. You're giving them the gift forever of this higher level reading comprehension. So anyway, let's get started. There's many ideas. I know you'll find one that will help you too. This is the thing. Excellent reading skills are going to be the thing that propels your child into, superior college experience or work experience or whatever they are. And there's so many things in homeschooling you can kind of wait on, like, well, we'll slow down on that. But reading, you know how important it is, right? You have to just keep going. And luckily, homeschooling is just made for teaching your child to have these superior reading skills. You're going to be able to tailor your child's reading experience to their particular interest and what they particularly they like to do. You can work at their own pace, so that if there's a period where they're starting to fall behind, rather than become depressed and stressed at school, you can just put all your effort into that. Sometimes people really take a step back from all the other subjects to really make sure reading is going to push ahead. And this is a great thing. You're home all the time, so you can make that propaganda campaign that reading is the best thing ever happened, right? You can model the joy of reading. You can talk to your children about what you're reading. You can be a reading role model where they see you reading. But the other thing that really, if you can only get one thing, is be really upbeat with your child, right? Play that long game. You want reading to instill confidence in your child. And so all the things that are happening for the rest of this video are about how you can make this reading comprehension, not only them to become a fantastic, fabulous reader of depth and substance, but to enjoy the process, to find joy along the way. So encourage your child, be positive, and keep moving in that positive direction so that it doesn't become a drudge. Because reading is one of those things where if kids start to kind of have it in their head that they're not good at it, or it's stressful, or it's bad, it's just an uphill battle. So you want to start, just keep building that positive game. Before we get into everything else, and there's lots of good stuff to come, I just want to go over some physical constraints, because sometimes that's a really big thing. If your child is only getting their eyes checked at your GP, they may not have really got a thorough eye examination. So you may want to just invest in going to an actual eye doctor every few years and making sure that your child's reading is on par. And then the other thing is, sometimes children do, they can see one letter, but their eyes aren't working together the right way. And so they need to actually have some reading therapy or some eye therapy for those eyes to work together and to read the right way. And if they don't get that, sometimes it just makes everything a lot harder. You might want to think about larger print books. So if you have a child that it's a little harder for them to, focus, or maybe they do have a reading difficulties, most books you can order in larger print, or you can get in larger print at the library, and this can make a big difference for a lot of kids. Even though we're talking about older children, when we're going through these, keep in mind that a reading card that moves under with the words to train the child's eyes to hit each sentence is a really important thing. Because even sometimes we see kids get even where they're trying to study for the SAT and they have this really hard, intense reading to go, and we realize that they can't quickly move from sentence to sentence. So if you're building this skill along, when you're listening to your child read aloud, just keep using that card, even if it's just a couple times a week, to kind of keep that going. Some kids are going to benefit more from a window card that has just a small hole in the middle and that they can move along. Sometimes even just pointing is necessary. And then you may think, oh my gosh, we're way past this. Why is she talking about this now? But keep doing these things to make sure that if there is any problem with physical constraints, with your child moving from one word to the other or from one sentence to the other, that you're catching that and you're practicing training them with these things, whether it's a card, the finger, the window card, whatever. And hopefully those little quick videos helped make that happen. So because of homeschooling and building, and if you watched our video on how to teach a lesson, you know what that's about. I'm just going to briefly talk about it now because I don't want this video to turn out to be 2 hours long. But that same idea of building, this is a really unique part of homeschooling. And so one thing that does happen sometimes with older kids is that people are sort of just throwing books at their children because you're so busy, it takes so long, right? That it's just easier to just here's the books, read it, and you can make some connections yourself. But homeschooling allows reading to occur in context, and part of getting those really higher level thinking skills going, really understanding the connections between what you're reading in the world and other books, and that spiral I talked about, how it's all connected, that wisdom of understanding how it all goes together, is really easier if you talk about each book. So even if you're just spending a few minutes before the book making connections between other books, helping your child to sort of think about what's happening, that's a really good thing. But think about building too, particularly if you're going to read a lot of books on a certain thing. You can talk about it, you can watch shows about it, you can play about it, you can go to a play, you can explore museums, you can take field trips, but try to find a way that you're looking back at what has happened that was part of that building process and bring bring it into context when you hand your child that book, okay? So, it could be if your child is really at that age where they're learning about the Civil War, that you go to a Civil War reenactment. It could be that if your child is learning to read a more difficult level science book, that they've been to an exhibit before that, but you're doing things to build so that when they get that book, they're just not thrown into that book, right? You've helped them build before the book happens to get that reading comprehension down, so that they're not just thinking about these are the actions that happen in the book, but that they can do that next level. And that's what really has to happen for your child to get that sort of superior reading comprehension. And so building is a really important thing. There's a lot of homeschooling curriculums that sort of build naturally. So for example, Sunlight has the history and the read alouds and the read books go together. Ferris Press does that. I think that Classical Conversation, there's several that happen that it's sort of put together like that. But you still, as the homeschool teacher, need to help make those connections. And if you're not homeschooling in that way, you're sort of unschooling, then, or you have a different kind of program, then you'll want to put even more effort into that building, because building really is a key thing for reading comprehension, right? So you're also going to really work at asking a lot of questions. So when your child was younger, maybe a lot of it was just, does my child say the right words? Do they seem to sort of understand the actions that happen? But now that your child is older, what you really want to do, I think, what I always wanted anyway, is I want my child to understand things at a deeper and deeper level. I want them to be able to, have the option to go wherever they want with the skills that they have. So you have to start thinking about asking questions that match those skills, not just the basic questions, all right? And give positive feedback, because your children are going to want to read if it's a positive experience, right? If you've made it joyful, if you don't sigh around, if you don't act like, oh, I'd like to be anywhere but here, right? You're making it seem like this is just exactly what you would want to do. Nothing could be better. So too many families, Renee and I have found, just quit teaching reading too soon. And maybe you're listening to this right now thinking like, oh, wow, good idea, but I just can't fit it in. But this is the essential skill. So getting that going is really important. And over again, I hate to say anything negative about homeschoolers, like I almost want to whisper it, but over and over again, Renee and I have found in teaching literature classes and SAT classes, there's a fair number of homeschoolers who their parents are really not aware of their reading level after about 3rd or 4th grade. Like they've quit doing read aloud, they've quit having their child read aloud because the child seemed like they were reading perfectly well, and they probably were. Though there's still a jump from that into comprehending really hard books. And so sometimes it turns out that the child just hasn't continued to progress in their reading level. It's pretty easy to fake too. So anyway, it's time consuming to keep going with that reading, reading instruction, but it's just really essential to not skimp on this, to find time to do this. Your child's going to benefit really hugely from this specific reading instruction all through their educational process, because these superior skills are what is going to get your child those high SAT scores. They're going to let them go to the college of their choice. They let them get scholarships, let them succeed in a trade, whatever it is. This is going to be really important. So just please try to find time. It's really going to pay off for you. Keep listening to your child read aloud. You even want to keep doing this, I believe, through high school, where you spend some amount of time listening to them read. You can understand from their tone, from their phrasing, like, do they understand what's going on here? And this is a case where just practice makes perfect. So you sitting there listening is really a key thing, that you can have that, conversation back and forth. So just try to put that in your schedule and go with it, and make as much time as you can, even though I know there's lots of other things. I know it's really hard, but it's a really important piece. Because a joyful reader is a non-stressed reader. So you want to play that long game. You want to keep focus on the child when you're actually sitting there with them reading. It's really easy to kind of sort of listen to a child read and also look at your phone, or you're looking outside. But you really, to build that reading comprehension, you really need to be focusing on, does the child really understand the tone? How it has the vocabulary here, from the inflection in their voice. Do they seem like they understand what's going on? So just really want to focus on that time. You have the luxury of time to build these joyful reading experiences into your child's life. It could be that you guys read outside in the swing sometime. It could be that you create, some tents in the house and people are going to read in them while they pretend to come. It could just be like, hey, we've got the air conditioning on. It's a hot day. You can sit here and have a popsicle and we're going to read. But try to find ways to bring joy into that reading experience. All right, so some nuts and bolts. Don't correct every little word that your child says when they're older. It just gets frustrating and it interrupts the flow. If it seems like they're understanding the sentence and especially if they're missing smaller words that they're just not saying right, just let it flow. If you yourself, though, can keep a list of words that maybe they missed. You might correct them, like, oh, here's how you say it. But if it's pretty clear that they didn't understand the word, we're going to say hypothetical is the word here. You can just write it down. And at the end of the reading time, just hand them that list. And then, they've had the joy of reading. It went pretty smoothly. It wasn't choppy. It wasn't, cut up. And here you can see in this little video, it's really, I think one of the few things that is really worth investing in is one of these sets of letters. So you can, see in the video how this can go. You can use the sort of Montessori cutouts that are very elegantly done, or the, more choppy magnetic ones. But the idea is a child then, at their own time, goes back later, they create those words, which takes a little longer. It's very hands-on, it's a very tactile experience. And if you don't hold with phones, you could put a dictionary there. But really, it's pretty easy for your child to use the phone, look up the word, and hear how it sounds a couple times while they're doing it out. And this can really improve their comprehension. And yet it doesn't cut up the reading time. You're not constantly correcting these words and going through what they mean. The other thing is that as your child gets older and you're reading aloud to you, whether they're just like a super, super sonically fabulous reader or they're a slower reader, you don't want to make an older child wait a long time to figure out a word or sound out a word. It just makes things more frustrating for them. So just wait a beat or two and then give them the word and keep going. Because when the older your child gets, you want that flow. You want that comprehension. You want to move on. You don't want that reading time with them to just be like this drudgery of, right? Don't make your child endlessly struggle, because again, we're going for joy. We're going for comprehension. And ask a question every page or two. So you're continuing to get that feeling for, is my child just saying the words, or do they understand the words? And that gets into the idea of active reading and thinking. All right, so if you have read a little bit about reading, you know that two big ideas that have been around for quite a while are whole language versus phonics. And this really works into how kids are reading when we talk about 5th or 6th graders. So there's fantastic things about phonics, right? I mean, phonics, kids can spell well, they can sound out any word, often they sound beautiful when they're reading, but one of the big negatives that people complain about with phonics is a child can sound like they are a brilliant reader and not really understand what's going on, because phonics is the idea that you're kind of decoding. It's kind of called a bottom-up method. And there's really great things about phonics, but sometimes we do see kids who've been taught to read just by phonics that really do not understand what they're reading. And so this time when we're talking about, junior high school, 5th through grade from on, where you really have to catch that and start filling in those pieces. If your child has been taught to read with whole language, usually kids understand comprehension very well, but they may need to be working on their spelling. They may need to be working on how words sound when they read them. So these two things each kind of work into what will be your job as the parent coach to fix. And if you did a combination of both, maybe you have no problems. But for some people, that's a thing to work on. So what you want to do is whichever way you pick, but particularly probably if your child just learned to read with phonics, is transition into these higher level open-ended questions and discussion points. So because you want your child to get beyond just what facts happen, you need to be part of this active process of reading, where you're teaching them to, as they're reading, to be thinking, to be questioning, to be imagining, like, what's happening next? How does this connect to that? How is this one? They're actively reading. So instead of reading as being sort of like this screen you're watching on TV that is just, you're not involved in it, it's something that you're asking a lot of questions about. You're really trying to think, okay, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to other things? And so you have to, I believe that that's what we all want, is that higher level of thinking. So you have to slowly start focusing on more and more than just the physical acts in the book. You're trying to get your child to sort of dig in. You're trying to teach your child to make those connections, notice patterns, notice clues, think about how everything fits together. So what does that mean? Or how does that look? So a lower level question might be, what color is his shirt? But a higher level one is, what's the significance of his shirt color? It could be, a lower level question might be, when did she scream? But a higher level one might be, why did she scream? Are there deeper reasons? This slide goes through all of them. I won't do all of them, but for example, instead of saying, what is the setting in this book? You could instead be saying something much more complicated, like, explain the way the author seems to be trying to encourage the reader to change their mind. Why? What do you think differently about the area that this book is taking place in? So when you're talking to your children, these are just some examples of how you're moving, now that your child is older, into this deeper kind of comprehension. Renee, did you want to say anything?
Helen, these are all great tips once again. And one thing I really would like our viewers to really get about Helen as she's making this video is Helen is really passionate about reading and instilling that love and that joy of reading into all students, her children, my children. One of the first things that my children got involved with her when we first met her was her reading book group. And she would have this book group and they would read great books that they were all interested in. They'd meet once or twice a week. They'd get pizza. They'd do something fun. And the kids in this group just couldn't wait to get to book group to talk about those books. So she figures out those things that help instill and keep that passion going and stoke that fire for reading. And she's really made this one of her key activities in many of the things she's engaged with in our homeschool community. And I've been so thankful to her. And it's wonderful to watch these children who may be struggling readers find a place where they can go and they can engage with other students and talk about those books. And I love when you talk about the questions that you ask after they read a book or after they've read a passage, not just the facts or statistic type questions, but those open-ended questions, those short answer sort of essay type questions. Those really make a student have to think about what they read. They have to analyze what was the author's intent in giving that color of that shirt. Why was that significant? What does the author want me to get from this passage or from this book? Or what significance does it have to me as I read it? And it helps them put those pieces of all of the facts that are in that book to put them together in a way like they're completing a puzzle. And reading comprehension is understanding what you've read and being able to analyze it. And asking those types of questions is going to help you gauge where your student is, where your child is in this reading process and where they need work, and where you can coach them and help them along. These are great points, Helen. Thanks.
Thank you, Renee. Thanks for listening to this first of our three-part series on improving reading comprehension. Renee and I just feel so passionately about this that we just really wanted to share these ideas. And again, we don't think that all of these will work for everyone, but we're hoping that one of these or two of these will be something that you can work into your curriculum. Because again, we've just seen it over and over again that whatever curriculum homeschoolers pick. There's going to be some children who just, fly with it, and others that maybe need a little more help along the way. But really, whichever kind of reader your child is, helping them to improve that reading comprehension is just going to help them so much in their life to come. We hope you'll join us for our second video, which is talking about a lot of different things, but kind of focuses on the kind of books you choose and the amount of time spent reading and a variety of other things. We hope to see you on part 2 and part 3 of this video series. If you like our videos, we would just love it if you would subscribe and maybe even give us a thumbs up. But thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.